welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about probably my favorite subject when it comes to tackle, fishing, rigging, stuff like that, and that is the jerkbait. I absolutely love this tactic. You know, it's one that can at times require pretty precise conditions, but at other times it just flat out works all year long. There have been years where I've had pretty rough years with the jerkbait, but more often than not, when the bite's really tough for me, this is the one thing I turn to get that bite. So what we're going to cover today are my favorite jerkbaits, the ones that I throw 90% of the time, the gear I use to throw it on, and then we'll cut to some video of me putting it to work so you can see me not just talk about it, but you can see it in action. And I think that's obviously more important than people talking about it, right? People talk about this stuff all day long. Does it actually work? Can you actually see it in action? I think that's what everybody wants to see. So I'll show you a bunch of different scenarios where I catch them using the jerkbait. But let's just start off with some of the ones that are always in my box that I'm going to use, you know, in 90% of the situations when I need a jerkbait. You know, I think everybody's familiar with a lot of the brands out there, right? People are going to tell you they have their favorites. I have mine too. Here in the Pacific Northwest, I'm going to save it for last, but there is one that seems to shine above all the others. And so we'll talk about that. I don't have any Megabass. I've used them. I don't care for them. You know, I think it's a combination of the price point and production. I've got jerkbaits in my box, mainly one that outproduces any jerkbait that I throw, any jerkbait that I've ever thrown, or any jerkbait in my box. And like I said, I'm going to save that one to the last because it's my absolute favorite. But let's start off with a couple of off brands. So, you know, I think there's a lot of different companies out there that make jerkbaits. Some, you know, really recognizable names like Monterbass, like Rapala. And then you've got some other companies out there that make them that they're just not as well known. One, for instance, is this one. And this is a deeper diving one. It's I'd compare it to like a 110+2. It's made by Baitcaster. It's got a red feather treble, kind of in a perch bluegilly type of a pattern. Has produced pretty darn well for me last year. It was the first year I threw them. It gets down there pretty deep. I've caught both walleye and bass on this one. It has done some pretty good things over the years, so I would tell you to check it out. I think it's worthwhile. They're not real expensive. I think they're about $7-8 a piece, but they come in a bunch of different colors. I've got, I don't know, 2 or 3 different patterns, but that has been a pretty decent one. Next one I'll take you to, I think it's a crowd pleaser, right? I think if you don't have these, excuse me, if you don't have these in your box, you probably are not a real jerkbait fisherman. This is a Smithwick Rogue 8. I've got about 40 of them, a bunch of different configurations. This one happens to have a crank wrap on it, which is basically a realistic sticker. About half of my Rogues have a crank wrap on them. Half of them are the stock colors. I think this one is called Fishback Attack. Absolutely killer, but the Rogue 8s do a really nice job. They have a really unique wobble. They dart and cut really nicely. Just a really good overall jerkbait. Next one, and I don't know who makes this, but here in the Pacific Northwest we have a lot of rainbow trout, a lot of trout in these waters, and bass feed on them big time. And I have not found a trout pattern style jerkbait that really made me think, wow, that's what they're eating. And so I had a guy paint this up. It's pretty similar to a Monsterbass, like a 110+1, but that is a custom painted rainbow trout style pattern. I think he knocked it out of the park with these. I ordered a couple in the 110+1s and then a couple of the just standard 110 suspendings. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful paint job. Can't remember the guy's name. He's on Facebook, but he uses a automotive grade paint and it just comes out beautiful. I'm hoping you can catch the detail on that because it's an absolutely beautiful hook, or a beautiful jerk bait. And then the Mustad triple grips. Next one, I've got a couple different ones. These are the Strike Kings. We've got the longer version, kind of a purple back, kind of like that Smithwick color. And then just a standard shad color in the shorter version. So those are the two KVDs. I got a bunch of different colors of those as well. But again, I've gotten more luck with these on smallmouth than I have largemouth here. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, this style tends to attract smallmouth a little bit better than largemouth. Got a fair amount of largemouth on them, but man, again, I don't know what it is, but a ton of smallmouth on those. And then when you get over to the Rapala side, you've got the deeper diving suspending, and then the shallow, slow rising versions of the Rapala shad wrap, or shadow wrap, I guess is what they call them. Both have a time and a place. I really like these smallmouth fishing again. I think the smaller profile just does something to attract them a little bit better. Excellent jerk baits though. I've got probably 30 of those. And when I say this, I'm not exaggerating. I probably have 6 boxes full of jerk baits. Now it's probably made up of 6 or 7 different brands. But man, I have a ton of them. Just absolutely my favorite, especially during the fall. I don't think you can beat a jerkbait during the fall, and a lot of the footage I'm going to show you is of that fall fishing. It's a hard pattern to beat when they're really feeding up for the winter and super aggressive, and then when it gets colder and colder, it's a technique that still works really, really well just by slowing it down a little bit more, slowing it down as the months go. Sometimes, like the unthinkable, like 10-15 second pauses, sometimes what it takes. And so when you're fishing a jerkbait, making sure it has that balance when it suspends, so that it's not rising too far up and it's not sinking too far down. It is imperative when you're jerkbait fishing, especially in those colder months, that when it's sitting in that water column, it's just sitting there, just waiting, and just gentle twitches. And it'll just sit there, and it won't rise up too fast, and it won't fall too fast. So you can let it sit there for 10 seconds, and it's just going to stay right there in the water column. And several of these do that better than others, but some really shine. Another one of the off-brand ones. This is pretty similar to one of my favorites, but this one's Monterbass. You know, it's got the same body style as a lot of the jerkbaits do, you know, the Monterbass and that kind of thing. But they make some, the reason I like this one is, number one, they fish well. They cast really well. But the colors they come in are, I think, what sets them apart. You can get some pretty crazy colors in here, like they have one called the Patriot that's like black and white cracked. They've got red craw or fire craw, whatever you want to call it. They've got baby bass, just a bunch of different colors that you don't see real often in a jerkbait, but absolutely fire in the spring. Like, no pun intended, this thing kills them in the spring. The color's fantastic, stands out. It's got a red treble, so it gives them a little bit something to aim for. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I fished this with the red treble and without, with the red treble tied on, probably 3 to 1. No joke, but not a bad jerkbait. Not crazy expensive either. I think they're $5 or $6 on their website, so definitely something to take a look at. But if I was to tell you to go out and buy one jerkbait tomorrow, hands down, 100% of the time, I'm going to tell you this one. I think this, in my opinion, and again, I'm super passionate about this. You can listen to me, you can not listen to me, doesn't matter. I will stand by this particular jerkbait 100% of the time, and that is the Clunn RCSTX. They make another one now that's same thing, it's the LESTX. But hands down, the #1 jerkbait I have ever thrown in my life, and probably will ever throw in my life. Like, I know 6 Cents makes a really good one. I know Monterbass makes a really good one. Like, I know there are companies out there that make, you know, the Jackal Rearrange is another really, really good one. But I'm telling you, here in the Pacific Northwest, if you don't have a box of these and you're not throwing them, you are missing fish. I promise you. The hooks aren't the best on them. They're not terrible, but they're not the best. So change them out if you want to. I usually change them to like a KVD triple grip or you know, whatever your favorite treble is. What I would caution you from doing though is going too big or too small on the hooks. These are balanced to the hooks that are on there, so I like to keep them the same size. If you want it to fall just a little bit faster, you can put a little bit bigger size treble on there. That'll pull that down just a little bit more, but don't monkey with it too much. These things flat out of the box fish unbelievably well. You can get them in suspending and rising, or floating, I guess if you want to call it, jerkbaits. 90% of the time in most of the applications that I fish suspending. If you're fishing grass lines, stuff like that, you can flip it to a floating one and keep yourself above that grass a little bit easier. But I'm telling you, this one right here, this color specifically, just, I mean, it flat catches them all times of the year. This is French Pearl, and again, hands down my favorite. Now, as far as the gear goes, in the last video we talked about what I use for small square bills. And I talked about the Alpha Angler slasher. Now, jerkbait fishing is where that slasher really comes in to play. This rod was specifically made for jerkbait fishing. It's a 610 medium action fast tip, and absolutely fishes a jerkbait the way it's intended to. Now, I know there are a lot of really good jerkbait rods out there. I know there are jerkbait rods out there that people spend $400, $500, $600 on. I will stand behind this 100% without any reservation and tell you, for the money, and I don't care what they say on Wired to Fish, on any of those other places that talk about fishing rods. The Alpha Angler Slasher is hands down the best jerkbait rod for the money that you will ever buy. I think they're right around 200 bucks, whatever they are. Tons of backbone to get them in, plenty of tip to make that jerkbait do exactly what it needs to do. Lightweight, absolutely fantastic rod. I have it paired with a Lews speed spool. And during the normal times of the year when I'm not fishing, you know, against real heavy cover, stuff like that, I'm going to go 10-pound fluorocarbon, and that is it. You do not need to go crazy on line weight. You can if you want to. But I think specifically on this rod, on those jerkbaits, 10-pound fluorocarbon gives you great castability, doesn't bog the jerkbait down. It allows it to move and do what it wants. You know, when you get up there bigger and bigger in line size, it can get a little bit more tense, right? And I think giving it that free action to almost turn around on itself can sometimes trigger strikes when nothing else will. Ducks taking refuge in here. There's one already. Not real big. Yeah. Bigger than I thought he was. Smallmouth. It's a really good one. Look at that.
cast of the jerk and twitch. Yeah, I just released them. First cast. Yeah, that's a good one. God, that water is warm. Yeah. Number 3. We've missed every fish we've had on in this corner. It's a big fish, big smallmouth. Not even a big one, just a largemouth. Not even that big. Boy, did that take a long pause. That color isn't that important this time of year. That's a good one. Nice long pause. Sitting out there on the end. I don't think color is that important this time of year. I think it's opportunity. Look at that thing. This rod's ridiculous. I think it's opportunity. I really do. I think it's more opportunity than it is anything else this time of year. Look at that. I'm not going to stay terribly long today. That. I think his hook's funny because he's not really fighting very hard, but he was sitting right on the end of that. Nice little largemouth. Big old bucket head. Look at this dude. Fires up. Look at that dude.